Hey, I'm Drew, and you're listening to the Citizen Coder Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Michael Page, a PHP developer in the UK and a member of the PHP Ugly Discord. We talk about family members in World War II, a unique way to get a job as a developer, Michael mixes up VIM hotkeys, and so much more. Let's dive in. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Hi there, I'm Michael Page. I'm a PHP developer and I'm part of the PHP Ugly community. So most people there all know me as Mike Page Dev. That's pretty much me.
Nice. You're in the UK.
I am, yes.
Whereabouts, if you don't mind me asking?
I live in Milton Keynes, which is about 50 miles north of London.
Okay, all right. Yeah, London's kind of the focal point for where you located questions.
Yeah, definitely.
um, I talked to another guy who is he's some way south of London, uh, but yeah, London's kind of the hub, I guess. Or is the area you live in, is that kind of a smaller area, or is it?
Milton Keynes is not as big as London, but it's quite a big area for industry. We're right next to one of the main, what you would call a highway, that goes from sort of London up north. So there's a lot of business here, a lot of distribution centres here.
Okay, so it's mainly kind of I guess a shipping.
It's mix and match. There's loads of stuff here. Milton Keynes was originally the idea of Milton Keynes was to try try and deal with the overspill from London. So they started
Oh,
building. We're a new city, so it sort of
oh,
started 60s, 70s building, and it's a lot of little villages in the area that have kind of all been swallowed up by Milton Keynes. So there's a lot of history here as well, loads and loads of history. One of the biggest bits of history is Bletchley Park, which
hmm,
was instrumental in World War II in cracking the Enigma code
oh,
from the
okay,
Germans. Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So that's part of Milton Keynes, and that's where I was actually sort of raised. Was sort of a stone's throw away from that house where they cracked the code.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I've heard a little bit about that.
Hmm.
I'm not super up on my World War II history, although I try to, I do some reading here and there. I actually had a great uncle that was a paratrooper in World War II.
Well,
We actually named our son after him. He uh, he was shot down over. Was he a paratrooper? I think he was a paratrooper. So he was captured by Germans. He spent 6 months in a concentration camp,
hmm.
and then was rescued by the Russians when they came through. And then when he got home, he his family was gone. He got home to wherever house him and his wife and family lived in, and they had already I guess moved out of the house and everything because they thought he was dead.
Oh wow,
And newspapers actually helped track him down, so we've got some newspaper articles about that, which is kind of neat.
wow. Yeah, there's. I think everyone, when you talk to anyone, anyone's got some sort of history. My great grandfather was a communications officer in a
Mm.
tank regiment,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I'm never sure if I actually get this story right. Unfortunately, my grandparents aren't with us anymore, so I can't clarify
Verify.
it.
Sure.
But the story that I remember it is that towards the end of the Blitz of London, because my family originally come from sort of out London area. I was actually born just outside of London.
Yeah.
Um, his family home took a direct hit from one of the bombs,
Oh wow.
and they managed somehow to allow him to have leave to come home for the funerals.
Mm.
And when he went back, to continue his service, he had found out that his tank had taken a direct hit and his whole crew had died.
Oh man,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
I knew my great grandfather as growing up as a child,
yeah.
and he would never talk about those sorts of things. But it was from my nan that we kind of slowly eked the story out of her. But yeah, it's a bit daunting to think of that they managed to get him to come home for the funerals and then basically saved his life pretty much.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
I that's it's one of those things like, and I can kind of see why he wouldn't want to talk about it.
mm,
Um, I have some friends that spent a lot of time in um, various actions overseas,
hmm
and talking about their experiences isn't something that they like to do. But when you when you basically you come home for funerals because your family died, and then
hmm
your other family dies on the other side, because a lot of military guys think of their crew and their their group as their
hmm
family. That's got to be harsh.
yeah, yeah. It's I don't know, I haven't done any sort of military, but I have a lot of respect that for anyone that does it, and I'm one of the sort of people that try and install it into my children that it's very important to know our history and know where we've come from and the sacrifices that people gave to give us the life that we have now, because our life could be completely different now if they didn't do what they did back then.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. You said you had kids. How many kids do you have?
I have one daughter and a stepdaughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
What ages?
My daughter is 16, almost 17. She's just started college. Although over here the way we name our schooling system is slightly different to how it works for you guys over there, because you quite often call college a university, what we call a university,
You call
from
it
my understanding.
university,
Yeah,
right?
so she's done her. So the way it works in the UK is you do some exams once you're 16, called GCSEs, and then you go on to do like either 2 years in a college to do things like A levels, or stay in the school doing sixth form, or do apprenticeships. And so you stay in that sort of
Mm.
education ground, sort of education for another 2 years to you about 18. So she's just started college, and my stepdaughter is 14. Um, and yeah, they certainly keep us busy.
So so your schooling system actually includes apprenticeships?
Yes. So it's changed over the years. So when I went to school, which was a while ago, we left school we could leave at 16. It was optional to stay on in education after 16. So I left school at 16. Um, but I can't remember how long ago it was, but they made it mandatory for people to stay in some sort of education, and within that some sort of education they include apprenticeships until you're 18. So you have to stay in education till you're 18, and one of the options is like apprenticeships. You've got colleges, you've got sixth form where you can stay on at your secondary school for another 2 years and continue studies there.
So from 16 to 18, you can basically learn job skills. Is that right? I mean,
Yeah,
what?
my daughter is doing sports science. She's really into sort of the sports. She's very sporty.
Okay.
Into that, you could go off and do courses in building, so bricklaying and so on, carpentry. So you can do very job related courses once you're 16. But then you can also go into environments where you could do a variety of different subjects. So if you were to stay on in secondary school and do what we call sixth form, you would generally have to study two to three different subjects. So you do have your main one, you have a few that you just have alongside as well.
Wow. Okay. That's definitely a lot different than our system here. We don't have a system of, well, I mean, you can exit school at 16, but they call that dropping out here.
Yeah.
But and we also don't really have a strong system of apprenticeships or being able to get trade uh, skills
hmm
uh, while in high school. I mean, yeah, they have like um, they used to have I forget what they called it, where you could go and do some of that kind of stuff, but it's not. It's definitely not to the level that the UK has.
Mm.
You're not going to go to high school here and learn a trade. You know, if you're interested in a trade, I mean, you can, like I said, you could. They have some schools have classes where you can learn like welding and things like that,
Yeah.
but it's not to the level that you would learn it if you went to college for it or
Mm.
went to an actual trade school for it,
Yeah.
which I think is something that some people do. Um,
hmm
but and then of course, uh, there are some people here that graduate school early, but that's because they've actually done all the coursework through 12th grade, which is our grade system is kindergarten, first through 12, and then college.
Yeah.
So if you if you were just like really good, you could graduate early and go into college, or even do college courses while you're in high school.
hmm
But outside of that, it's not a system where you know you could exit high school and still get your high school diploma without actually finishing 12th grade. But yeah. um so oh yeah, so I have a kid. He's 6 years old.
Cool.
So I'm constantly thinking about his education. We're currently homeschooling him
Okay.
through a it's a virtual academy, so um it's actually affiliated with the state. So it'll be grades, kindergarten through 12th grade, unless we decide to put him in an actual physical location later.
hmm
But we wanted to kind of start him off doing the virtual thing. you know America's kind of still wild west in a lot of areas, although where I'm at is a lot more quiet. It's a small town in Arkansas, so it's not. We probably have maybe 20,000 people here. I'd imagine where you're at, it's a lot bigger.
Yes, I can't think off the top of head what the population here is. To be honest, I've never really uh, taken much note of that. Which sounds really bad. Actually, I probably should know that.
Nah. I mean, I only know it because it's such a small amount here. But I mean, it's a good place. Here's a good place to raise kids, and without fear of too much in the way of violence or that sort of thing. Um, there are areas like that. I think everybody thinks the U.S. is very much like everybody's strapping, carrying guns and wandering around with AKs on their backs.
No, we don't think that. Trust me, we don't think
Okay,
that.
okay, okay.
just certain areas.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of people here that carry, but a lot of them
Hmm.
have concealed permits and things like that. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so you did you go to college for programming, or not? Just
No.
switch
Um,
gears here.
yeah. No. So I left school at 16.
Okay.
Um, I'm dyslexic
Okay.
and had quite a hard time with secondary school.
Sure.
Didn't do very well in my exams at 16.
Okay.
Although I passed everything, they weren't. they weren't classed as a pass, what we would call a pass these days. They kind of changed the how you look at those exams now.
Mhm.
Um, so I at that point I had a lot of sort of teachers and people saying to me that I'd be much better in like a labouring job or get a trade like a brick a brickie, a bricklayer, or a plumber, or something on those sorts of lines.
Yeah.
Um, and none of that really interested me. So when I left, although I quite like working in the garden, I've always liked being in the garden. So when I actually left school at 16, I started off as a landscape gardener, got a
Oh,
job
okay.
with a local company, which didn't last very long um, because of the difficult time I had in high school, secondary school. From it's I was bullied a lot. So
Mhm.
when I went into that sort of environment, I didn't understand the banter, what we call banter, the sort of the
Right.
joking around in the office in uh,
Yeah.
between each other. So I struggle to see that as that's just them trying to have a bit of fun, get me to relax and get a feel for the team and sort of just have fun at work. I saw it as bullying, just pure bullying. I couldn't see the difference, so I didn't get on very well with that. Um, so that didn't last for very long, to be honest. And then I started working in the care industry as a care assistant in nursing homes, and I kind of just bobbled around with a few different jobs. I worked in McDonald's for a few years, and then found myself in retail, and I'd done retail for quite a long time. Got quite good at it. Was sort of managing stores,
Mhm.
um, and all through all that time, I've in the background a few different hobbies and here and there. And one of them was actually performing in local amateur dramatics,
Oh,
doing
okay.
musicals on
Right.
stage, which was a great release for me. I'd been doing it since about 10 years old. It was the ability for me to just be someone different because I was struggling, especially as a child, struggling a lot with my dyslexia, the
Mhm.
bullying within school. I
Yeah.
was quite a small child, like one of the really sort of skinny kids. Unfortunately, had quite big fluffy hair as well and big thick glasses. So I was kind of a massive target for those bullies.
Sure. Yeah.
For the ones that are good at football, soccer as you would call it, or the sporty
Right.
ones, I was there. I was the ones that would get pushed around in the corridors and things.
You weren't
Uh,
the jock.
no, I definitely was not the jock. Not to begin with. I in
Yeah.
secondary school I did start to play rugby, and I was pretty good at rugby because I could run fast.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if you rugby is
Mhm.
kind of our version of American football.
Sure. We have
Um,
rugby here.
yes, yeah, okay. So I was a winger because I
Okay.
ran fast. They gave me the ball when I was gone, and I'd be up there, and no one. It was very rare that someone could catch me. So I was the one that just get on the wing, they get the ball to me, and I just run up the wing as fast as I possibly can do. Um, so I did kind of get into sports. I got a lot of sporting background in my family. My grandfather was a semi-professional footballer and an athlete. My nan was an athlete as well, and my mum did a lot of running as well. So there's quite a bit of sports in my background. Um, so I do have that in me, but I wasn't at school. I wasn't homing in on that much because I was still quite small. I was quite scrawny. Um, so amateur dramatics sort of came along. My dad's side of the family are very musical, so that's where I get the two sort of
Yeah.
sides of it. So amateur dramatics was a release for me, so I'd go stand on stage and be someone completely different, which was good for me. But as I was getting older, sort of in my 20s, I was still doing the shows with adult groups, enjoying performing, enjoying entertaining people. Um, at the same time, I was starting to get introduced to the technical side of theatre, so the lighting and sound. And I found I actually enjoyed that a lot more than being on stage.
Oh, okay.
Um, so much so that I actually started freelancing as a theatre technician,
Nice.
doing sort of designing lights for shows and
Right.
doing sound for shows, and alongside my day job, sort of in retail and doing a few things. Unfortunately, I was made redundant from retail around about 2010, and wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And at the time, my brother, or two of my brothers, I'll say two. I've only got two brothers, so both my brothers were working for a bank
Yeah.
in a call center that was in Milton Keynes, and said, "Why don't you? You've not got any work. Come and work for us. You've got quite a good sort of skill sets that they look for. You've dealt with customers face to face, and that's something they quite often look for." So yeah, I worked for the bank in the call center.
Yep.
Um, Worked there for quite some time. Moved into sort of the complaints handling. So I started off in customer services on the phone, and then I went into complaints handling. So where I'd investigate complaints that customers had made, and then had the job of phoning the customer back and explaining my findings. And
Okay.
the whole myth of the customer's always right, you find out very quickly when you work in those industries, they're not.
They're not. Yeah,
They quite
exactly.
often they're wrong, and you've got to
Yep.
tell them that in some way. So that I feel was a skill that I developed extremely well. Learning how to talk to people and give them bad news, knowing
Sure.
full well
Yeah.
they could blow up at you on the phone. I mean, they're on the phone; it's
Right.
not too bad, um,
Yeah.
but it's still uncomfortable having someone shout down the phone at you and
Oh,
start
I know.
swearing at you. It's not pleasant.
No,
Um,
it's not. And anytime I have to deal with customer service, I always try to be polite,
mhm,
and because I'm kind of like you. I worked in retail for a long time, and I've worked in sales. I did a lot of cell phone sales at one
mhm,
point, and you definitely have to learn how to handle not so happy customers in both of those industries.
yeah,
Um, and so yeah, it's not easy when you've got somebody screaming their head off in the phone at you.
definitely not.
And depending on where you're working, you may not have the option to just click.
Yeah, no, you don't have that. Hanging up on a customer was a big no.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
not allowed to do that. So,
Right.
but it installed a lot of skills. Whilst I
Hmm.
was working there, though, I was doing a few other things. I started doing a bit of mobile DJing, just to sort of put a bit more money in my pocket. And I knew someone that was like a graphic designer and web developer. Well, he said he was a web developer. At that point, I didn't know anything about coding or web development, and he offered to build me a website for my mobile DJing and things, so I could try and market myself a bit more and start moving towards maybe that as a more of a full time job and not be working in the bank.
Yeah.
Um, that never happened.
Oh.
It never happened. He never built me the website, and in fact, he still owns a domain name.
You're like
I've registered a different domain name now, but he still owns the original domain name. But I haven't seen him for about 3 or 4 years.
that jerk
So
owes you a website.
yeah, so no website for me.
If
So
you're listening to this, Mike requires a website ASAP.
well, that was back then. I then said, right, if he's not going to build it, let me have a look. Let's see how hard it really is to build a website. So I bought some books. Bought some books on HTML, bought some books on WordPress, um, and taught myself. I've started reading about HTML, and
Hmm.
I
How
remember bit. So,
how old were you?
oh god, hang on,
Just curious.
Got to do some maths now.
Shoot,
So
you didn't expect to come on here and have to do math.
no, God no. Um, well, I'm 41 now.
Okay.
So I would say that's about 5 years ago, so mid 30s.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Mid 30s, I went, right, okay, I'm
So
going
you
to have.
started kind of late too.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. So I started looking at it, and I remember sitting on holiday, sitting on the sun lounger, um, reading this book about HTML, reading it and thinking, actually, this isn't as hard as you think it is. A lot of this really makes sense to me, like the syntax and how HTML works. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
So at that point, I had a little think. I'd always had this idea for a computer game in the back of my head from my early 20s. Um, and I thought, oh, okay, so if this doesn't seem too bad, how easy is it to program a game? So I started doing some research and looking at what languages do I need to learn to write a computer game. And a lot of people were pointing me to C++. plus plus. And then I read an article that was really interesting that said the first lines were said, "I'm going to tell you why you should not write your first game in C++ plus plus, and you should write it in C sharp instead.
Oh,
But
okay.
at the end of it, you're still going to write it in C++." plus plus. I thought, okay, that's a bit weird. You're telling me not to, but you expect me to anyway. So I read the article, and it was really, really interesting. And it used an example of golf and Tiger Woods. That if you were to go and buy the same clubs that Tiger Woods uses, you're not going to play as well as Tiger Woods. In fact, you're probably going to play worse with
Sure.
those clubs than if you went and bought a beginner's set of clubs,
Right.
because they are so honed to what he does. The article trying to say that C++ plus plus is for the pros that have been programming for a while. If you're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
getting into it, try C sharp. So I started learning C sharp whilst on holiday. That actual holiday, got the laptop out and started learning C sharp off of YouTube videos and things. And by the end of the holiday, I was having doing these things where in the command line it would ask you to write in your name,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then your surname, then it will write back to you saying hello, so and so, how old are you, and a few little, just a few
Sure.
lines of code. And I thought, oh, this isn't as hard as I always thought it would be. I felt
Right.
computer programming to me was something that I'd never be able to do. I thought, no,
Hmm.
that's way beyond me. I'm not intelligent like that at all.
I mean,
So
that's kind of my story too. Like
mm,
I avoided programming like the plague because I
mhm.
thought that, I wouldn't be able to understand it or it'd be too hard for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I basically started learning C sharp. Whilst I was doing that, I was made redundant from the bank. That was 2014. So 2014, I was made redundant from the bank, and I was just learning C sharp at the time. And then I went and worked at a secondary
Is
school.
is that a layoff?
Yes, layoff. Yeah. So
Okay.
I had a fairly nice sort of. It was planned. Everyone was like, "We're going to make. We haven't got jobs for you anymore. Here's your package."
Sure.
They gave us some help with trying to
Like
find a new job and things like that, and they tried to find us placements within the company
oh,
elsewhere. For
okay.
me, it did nothing worked. So I did leave the company, and I got a job at a local secondary school
Oh, okay.
as the drama technician. So
Mm.
doing lights and sound full time, which is great because that's something I've been trying to do for a few years now, and I really enjoyed that. And I was part of my job I had to do an after school club where I taught students how to do the sound and light in theatre. So I really really enjoyed sort of passing on my knowledge to secondary school uh, students, and that was a lot of fun. And I kind of stepped away from the programming for a little bit because I just found I didn't have the time to sit and learn programming and
Hmm.
do the job. My daughter at the time was getting really into football, so I was doing football training and football games, and my stepdaughter swims competitively, so her swimming was getting a lot more intense, so a lot more training days so everything was getting a lot of running around for the kids. So it's like didn't really have time, couldn't find the time to actually do any sitting down and doing any coding. So it kind of
Yeah.
fizzled out a bit. And then for me, it's really bizarre. I
Mhm.
watched a motivational video with Arnold Schwarzenegger that completely changed my way of thinking
Oh,
of how
interesting.
life works and how the
Right.
day should shape out. And it's really, really interesting. So he's been interviewed on stage, and I can't remember what it's for, but he's been interviewed on stage, and he talks about how when he went over to America. He was a labourer on the building site, but would go to the gym for about 3 hours in the morning before starting work, and after work he would then go to acting classes in the evenings. And you think, look at it and go, how did he actually have time to do all that? That is just incredible, what he did to try and make it
Yeah.
in the world. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
he sort of acknowledges that people are thinking that in the audience. He said, right, so he starts breaking down um, your day. So you says, right, you're traveling to work, you work, you probably eat for a couple of hours a day, and then did all the sums, and said, well, that leaves you with 6 hours to sleep. Okay,
Yeah.
that's 6 hours. That's not a lot. And then
No.
he makes this joke that someone in the audience is looking at him and goes, "No, I need 8 hours of sleep a day. I can't live on 6 hours sleep." And he said, This is my advice to you." And he looks at this person in the front row. I'm sure it's like a plant or something like that. And he says, "Sleep faster."
Sleep faster.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
And I just sat there and
Mind blown.
my mind was absolutely blown. And from that day onwards, I started getting up at sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock every morning,
Hmm. Yeah.
and I studied. I studied computer programming every morning, and I was still doing C sharp then. And I carried on, just pushing myself every morning, getting up. Everyone else is asleep. I get about an hour to an hour and a half every morning. Um,
Were you doing books
I
or
was doing
video, or what were you doing?
videos, going through videos on YouTube and coding as I was watching the videos. So I was
Okay.
writing out the code as
YouTube.
they were showing. So yeah, YouTube. Um, did I have Udemy then? I don't know if
Yeah.
I discovered Udemy at that point.
Yeah. Probably not.
Maybe not. I can't remember now.
I discovered it in 2016, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably a couple years.
Yeah. So I, as that was going on, that's sort of towards probably around sort of 2016, 2017.
Hmm.
Um, I I'm just trying to get the timings right now
Oh
because
yeah, no problem.
the whole
That's
thing with the pandemic has just thrown everyone's timings
it's
out of the window.
dude, it screwed everything up.
It's messed
Um,
a lot of things up. Um,
yeah, it really has, including timing and when,
oh,
trying to get events right. And
we
you're like,
tend
when
to
did this happen? And
yeah
then you try to,
we tend to measure everything whether it was before COVID or after
yeah, yeah, yeah,
COVID.
yeah. I think they need to make a new calendar thing. Like we had
Yeah,
BC, and now we have to have AC for after COVID.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. We seem to using COVID as a big sort of
yeah,
focal point to measure.
yeah. We can
Um,
keep BC because that works for before COVID. But
yes, yeah, we could, yeah, yeah. So, all right, so I'm thinking, so it must have been about 2019.
okay,
No, 2018. So,
yeah,
sort
18.
of Easter time, 2018. I was still working at the school, but the network manager who looked after the computer network was retiring, and one of the network technicians was leaving. So that left
Mm,
one person running the whole school.
yeah,
And we've got one of the biggest schools in Milton Keynes. We're talking over sort of, I think it's about 3,000 students and then about 200 to 250 staff. So it's for us in Milton Keynes, that's quite a big high secondary school.
okay, all right,
So one person running the network for that was a bit ludicrous. So they started advertising for a network technician, and I thought, well, that might be interesting. Another way, and just something different. to do, because at the time I was starting to see that there's no progression for me in the job I was doing. I am just the theatre technician. I look after all the lights. I light all their shows. I teach it to some of the kids, but there's nowhere for me to go in my career.
Right.
And I'm for a theatre technician at my that age. It's quite hard. It's great when you're younger and you've got no dependents. You could go and work in London. You can go on tour with shows, and
Yeah.
you can have a good time. But when you get to the point where you've got kids,
Right.
you've got a girlfriend at the time, and you've got a house to pay for and things like that, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can't just uproot your life and go. Yeah.
So IT seemed like, oh, I might give that a go. So I applied for the job. Shocked everyone apparently, because I said, well, we didn't had no idea that you had applied for this job. I said, well, I'm kind of like I'm doing a bit of coding. I'm learning a bit of C sharp. I'm quite getting into computing. I'm now sort of looking after my own computers. I learned how to turn them off and on again when they go wrong. And they're a
All
bit more advanced.
the only thing you really need to know right there.
Exactly. um, and so I thought I'll go for it. It's something different for me. I needed a change. I've been doing the technician work for nearly 5 years at the school. I needed something different. So they basically they gave me the job without an interview, but I still had to do some of the technical sides with the lighting and the sound. So
Sure.
I did a bit of a hybrid. So I basically had to learn computer networking ridiculously fast. I mean, the learning curve was huge. But just as I went into the role, we were combining with another secondary school within the area to have a multi academy trust, which is just
Okay.
like a body that looks after multiple schools.
Oh, okay. Right.
It's quite a common thing now in the UK. A lot of schools are now combining, so it's not just individual schools. There's a trust above the schools that look after multiple schools.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of
Um,
a
so
network and
yeah, so part of that merger, there was going to be a an IT director who was the network manager from the other school, the other high school that we were merging with in a way. So he came to me um, and was talking to me about the intranet that he had written that they use in the other school. And they'd like to bring it over to the school that I was working in. And it was written in a language called PHP. Did I know anything about it? And I looked at it and went, I know it's a programming language. That's it. Knew nothing else about PHP at that point. And he said, "Well, you're the only person here that's interested in coding because I know you've been learning sort of C sharp.
Wait,
I want you to look after it."
why were they
And
using PHP? Isn't that dead?
no, you see, that is an argument we can
Just kidding.
talk about for a long, long time.
uh,
I haven't got all evening.
yeah. Oh, that's
um,
funny.
no, so yeah, it's a PHP. Right at the time, I had no idea what PHP is,
Yeah.
and so I took up the role in Easter, sort of April time of 2018, and September 2000. I'm sure it was 2018. I'm sure probably got the year wrong, but in September of that year, the
It was BC before COVID.
yeah. Um, that September of that year, we started to implement this intranet into our school. So in that time, I was up every morning at 5:30, 6 o'clock, learning PHP as fast as I could to be able to then take on this intranet and start introducing like feature by feature. So it was just this feature is going to go live first, then this one, and it was a journey. It definitely was a journey, but I really enjoyed it. And the
So
more I learned about PHP, the more I went, oh, I've got all these ideas, all these little ideas that have been in my head for years. It's like this is the perfect language to try and implement some of these ideas. So that's kind of my introduction to PHP to start with. That's how I
wow,
started programming. Um, and then it was
that's crazy.
yeah, and it was in 2020, in November 2020, I got my first full time uh, development role. And
Now, did you um did you stay with that company or have you moved companies?
no, I have been with the same company for almost 2 years now. My
Oh,
two
nice.
year 2 year anniversary is in November.
So they had you transfer their intranet, or
Oh yeah, so the school
I must have
sort of,
missed.
that's okay. So I implemented the intranet in the school that I was working in.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
I did, and I started writing new features that weren't there. So I was
Oh,
writing
wow.
stuff from scratch to add to it that were being implemented in both schools.
So
Um,
you had how much PHP experience at this point?
about 6 months.
And about how much programming experience did you have at that point?
Um, well, I'd been sort of tinkering with it since
Sure.
about 2014.
Okay.
So, but
Here
it
in
literally was on and off, and I didn't
Yeah, yeah.
understand when I started. I didn't really understand basic programming
Mhm.
structures,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and how to solve simple problems with different things like loops and stuff, and all those sorts of things. I didn't really know that when I
Right.
started looking at PHP.
Wow.
So my knowledge was really, I would say, was really small at the time when I
At the time.
started to learn PHP in readiness to start implementing this intranet.
Yeah.
So I learned quick and fast, but
Yeah, you
I was still only really writing programming sort of a couple of hours a week, because I
Okay.
had so much other work to do to keep the network running and
Right.
making sure that like some of the strangest things were being called to a classroom because the projector wasn't working, and it's just
Yeah.
because it was turned off at the wall. One of the
Of
stories is I literally walked into a classroom, and the
Yeah.
teacher looked at me and goes, "There's no lights on the projector; it's just not turning on." I looked at the
Mm.
wall, flicked the switch, and walked straight back out again without saying a word. I was like,
Uh,
"What?"
I've I've not only heard so many stories like that, but I've also experienced so many things like that. It's mind-blowing, um, how much or how little people really know about the technology they
Mm,
use day to day, including, turning something off and back on. When I was in cell phone sales, I used to do a lot more support than I did sales. I'd have people come in and their phone, they'd have an app that was just doing it was not responding. It was just not doing
mm.
anything. And they're like, I closed the app and reopened it and it's doing the same thing. So I'd ask them, when was the last time you turned your phone off and back on? And they would look at me and they'd be like thinking about it. And they would say, well, never. I've had my phone for 2 years and I've never turned it off.
Mm,
Or, yeah, however long. Sometimes phones will reboot themselves if they update, but that's the only time their phone had ever been turned off.
yeah.
So I'm like, well, turn it off and, and back on, and it would fix the problem. It's so many people, they just they don't know a whole lot about the technology they use, including just powering off and back on, which fixes probably a good 98% of issues with
Oh,
technology.
oh yeah, but we know that because we're into IT in
Yeah, yeah.
whatever form. I didn't know that 10 years ago.
Okay.
If I think back to when I was completely like not technophobe as
Hmm.
such, but I didn't know
Yeah.
anything about tech 10 years ago,
Right.
I didn't understand why turning something off and on again would work. I
Yeah.
didn't know why. So that is one thing I think we have to take into consideration when we're dealing with people that are outside of the tech industry. I mean, in the UK, there was a bit of a sitcom called The IT Crowd, where it's an
Yeah.
ongoing joke where
Yeah.
it was three people working in an um, office building as IT technicians, and there's one that would literally like playing a computer game on his computer, or watching videos, or doing something, and just pick up the phone, and before he said anything, would just say, "Just have you tried turning it off and on again?"
Click.
And then put the phone down. And so it's a running joke, but people that
Yeah.
don't work in the industry don't understand why,
Right.
or even think of that as the first thing. We do
Hmm.
because we're
We've
now
done it.
conditioned to do it. That's
Hmm.
the first
Sure.
thing we try, because we know that things can just get messed up in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
But as a user, you don't always think of that because it's not what we
Hmm.
would say is common sense. You
Right,
kind of have
right.
to learn to understand why that is
Yeah.
the solution to that issue.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, it's not right. It's for a non-tech person, that's not common sense. Like the common sense thing would be to close the app and reopen it if it's on a phone,
yeah,
or and the same with on a computer. If you've got an app or an application or something that or a website that's not responding, you just close it and reopen it.
yeah,
And sometimes that works, but yeah. Or if the printer is not connecting, sometimes powering it off and back on, but yeah, people don't. For us, those are like super basic troubleshooting that should be done first, and for most people that aren't necessarily tech savvy or knowledgeable about their tech, that's not something that they would try first.
no, exactly.
So, okay, so you do you still currently work for the school?
No, so sorry.
Okay.
To continue the story, so in 2020, again, I realised that although I was getting to do a bit of programming, I was getting a bit of doing the theatre tech, and I was learning a lot about network management. Network management was like I
Not your
wasn't really, my
passion.
heart was not in it. It wasn't my passion. I really loved the time where I could stick my headphones on and just code,
Right.
figure problems out using code.
Hmm.
Someone would come to me and say, "We want this to do this. Can you make it happen?"
Right.
Yes, I can. And I was really enjoying that, and it was becoming very clear to me that that is kind of what I wanted to do. So started talking to the teachers at the school about possibly doing some sort of qualification through the school that the students would do. So what we call A levels. So doing like a computer science A level, which is the A levels are the ones that you would take at 18. So you would study them from the age of 16 to 18.
Okay.
So I was
All right.
thinking, is there a way? Because I've heard of other people doing like the English or maths or things like that whilst working at the school, and
Hmm.
then just sit in the exam in the exam hall with the other students at the end of the year, and they just sit at the back. So
Sure.
being able to retake some of their qualifications that maybe they didn't do very well in when they were at secondary school first time around. So I just started talking to them about that. We looked into it. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible due to a large chunk of the course needed you to do what was called controlled conditions.
Okay.
So you're programming a
Labs.
some whatever, but you're doing it in a classroom under supervision. So you're
Okay.
not
Yeah.
being able to cheat, as it were.
Yeah. That's kind of
So
like a.
because of that, the logistics didn't really work. So I didn't in the end I didn't do that. But what I did do my wife bought me the textbooks that they use within the school for that level for computer
Okay.
science for my birthday in May, and that was May 2020. And I thought, oh, cool. So, as part of me still getting up really early in the morning, doing a bit of learning PHP, I also integrated going through these textbooks and learning the computer science at their level,
Okay.
that sort of level, the A level. Um,
Right.
and it just got me thinking. I'm thinking, right, I'd really like to actually somehow have an official certificate to show that I have completed some sort of course
Hmm.
officially in computer science because I left school at 16. Um, People all told me when I was at 16, education wasn't for me. You're not going to be able to do anything that's sort of academic, as I would say. It's more physical. I should be doing physical jobs rather than academic jobs. Um, and I just had this burning desire to prove everyone wrong. Really
Yeah.
wanted to prove everyone wrong. And I sat down with my wife and we started looking at it. Um, and we came across there's an organisation called the Open University, which is
Yeah.
actually based in Milton Keynes. So it's literally just down the road from me. In fact, I think we talked about it in message.
Okay. Yeah.
because I go there quite often because I'm also a member of the Milton Keynes Chess Club, which meets at the Open University.
Oh, okay.
So
All
we
right.
had a look, and this organisation offers people the ability to do degrees, but from home. So you
Oh.
don't need to attend classes. You are just given your books and you study them and you do tests at the end of them. You send it all off. A tutor marks it all, and so on and so forth. So we
Hmm.
looked at it, and I basically started a computer science degree back in 2020.
Yep.
I've recently just submitted my last assignment for what you would class as your first year of university. So I've now finished my first year of university and just about to start onto what would be classed as second year. And the nature of doing it at home is it's part time, so it's actually
Hmm.
going to take me twice as long. So a 3 year course is actually going to take me 6 years to complete.
Hmm.
So I've been doing it for 2 years, which is the first year. So it
What
started that off in October of 2020.
what sort of what sort of time do you have to put in per day for that?
At the moment, I'm needing to put about 20 hours a week in.
20 hours a week.
Yeah,
Okay.
about
All right.
20 hours a week is the easiest way for
That's
me
not
to
terrible.
break it. It's not terrible. It's difficult with two teenagers and to try and
Sure.
find time. But
Yeah.
again, I get up at half 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I now study my university
Hmm.
textbooks and do all that in the mornings. So
Yeah. I'm
I'm
probably doing
now
that.
I'm in that routine of getting up early to do that, and I do some in the
Yeah.
evenings. Like if the wife is out in the evening,
Hmm.
and I'm home alone, I'll then do some more studying.
Are you able to get ahead or cut time off of that?
I
Um,
could do. The way I'm
like
doing it is I'm utilising something we have in the UK, which is student loans. So I'm not actually paying any money towards this course yet.
right.
I'm getting a loan from the government, which I'll start paying off. The end of the next academic year, I'll have to start paying off. But it's something like 9% of my salary will be going out. So it's actually done from my employers will pay out of my wages, so I don't really see
Oh,
the money. I'm not going to miss it. And it's 9%. nine
okay.
percent isn't a lot, so I shouldn't really miss it. So,
Yeah,
um, but because I'm doing it as part time, there's a cap to how much I'm allowed to borrow from the government each year.
I see.
If I wanted to do more, so if I wanted to do, so at the moment I can do 2 modules a year. If I wanted to do a
Yeah,
third module in a year, I'd have to pay that out of my own money because that goes over the limit that the
the
government
amount
will
that
lend
they've.
me.
Yeah.
So you could do. I mean, you could do it in 3 years if you're not working. You could do the degree in 3 years, but you would have to pay out of your own pocket half of it.
So you said it's 9%.
Yeah, we pay back 9% of our wage at the moment, unless it's
Okay,
changed.
I
We've just
see.
had announcements of budgets, and I've not looked in to see if that's
Yeah.
changed.
So it's 9% of your wage.
Yeah.
For what? How long of a period?
I think if I remember rightly, it goes for 30 years, and after 30 years, whatever's left to pay is written off.
Oh, okay.
So
I
basically,
see.
I'm never going to pay off the whole of the loan.
So it's a big ass loan.
It will be a bit. I mean, it's something in the region of about six and a half. No, sorry. Let me try and remember what it is. It's about £3,500 a year
Oh,
over
okay.
6 years. So 6 years.
All right. Three.
So
So roughly. Oh, we'll call it roughly $3,000 a year for college.
yeah,
Roughly.
yeah.
That's not. I mean, that's not horrible
Yeah, for over a 6
over a
year
6 year period.
period.
Yeah.
Um, so
So about 18,000.
That's about
Yeah.
18,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's comparable to if I was to go to university for 3 years and to
Yeah.
study, but I need to pay bills
Right.
and mortgage, so I need to work at the same time because I'm doing it as part
Yeah.
time. So that's something I started 2020, and at the same sort of time as I started that, I'd started looking at job postings just to
Hmm.
see what were the jobs out there, and
Yeah.
you joke about PHP being dead. The
Just a
amount of
joke.
I
Just
know,
a
I know,
joke.
I know it's a joke, and it's
I don't.
fine.
I don't want Eric Van Johnson, coming
Yes,
after me.
I, I've listened to your previous podcasts. So I I just remember thinking that there are a lot of job postings for PHP developers. So
Yeah,
PHP is definitely not dead. There are a lot of people
definitely,
looking,
definitely not dead.
definitely looking for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Um,
and the
but
language
there
is
were
in.
ridiculous postings, which I'm sure you've seen, and I've heard you talk about with other guests on your podcast.
Mhm.
Things like a junior dev with 5 years experience of PHP, knowing Laravel, you need to know JavaScript, you need to know this, you need to know
Yeah,
that, you need to know the name of my dog,
yeah.
and
They
all
want the
those
full
sorts of stuff.
stack. It's
It's like,
ridiculous.
what? And it's insane. You want someone, a junior dev, to do that,
Right.
earning a
And
ridiculous.
that's kind of across the whole spectrum of tech.
It
Like
is.
most of
It's
these job postings are to coin or to borrow a phrase from you, bloody ridiculous.
yeah. Um, it's insane. And I was listening to your latest episode
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yesterday on the way back, on my drive back from the office. So
Oh yeah.
I
Hmm.
went into the office yesterday. And I've got about 45 minutes to an hour drive. So I was listening to that podcast, and I can't remember the chap's name that you were talking to.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
Brooklyn Myers.
Yes, and he was talking some really interesting advice about how to get your first job in tech. Actually, I thought
Yeah,
that was really good what he was saying.
he
But
had a lot of really good
he was
advice.
saying about how the job postings are silly for junior dev, for someone to get in at the bottom level. And it surprises me that everyone I talk to that are developers say
Hmm.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So why are companies still getting it wrong? If all the developers are saying that's a stupid advert for a junior dev, surely there's got to be some tech managers that are saying the same thing and saying, no,
Yeah.
we can't put out a job post like that if you want to have a junior dev.
Yeah.
It blows
Yeah.
my mind. It feels like that there's just no communication
Hmm.
between the actual developers
Right.
and the management
And the
or the
management.
recruiters
Yeah.
or the HR departments, whoever it is that writes these ads. It's insane. So
Right.
I,
And
I
I would think the recruiters probably know more about what their clients want, and it's more the job posting. And I don't know this for sure. I'm just
mm,
spitballing. I don't. I know very little about recruiters and what they do other than recruiting people.
yeah, I
Um,
don't really know what they do either.
but the job postings I think that are mostly skewed or weird or crazy are done more by HR than they would be by a
Mm.
recruiter. I would think a recruiter would be a little closer to the pulse of what a company needed.
You would like to think so.
Right, exactly. Like again,
You'd
I
like
don't
to think
know,
so.
but
It's odd, but yeah, I just remember going through all these adverts, and
yeah,
I happened to come across one that was looking for someone with 1 year's PHP experience,
holy crap.
and
One whole year? Just
that
one?
was that was it. No other requirements
Were they paying
apart
like
apart from understanding Laravel as well.
okay,
So
all
they
right.
said PHP 1 year's PHP experience and some sort of knowledge of Laravel, but not necessary. And I
Yeah.
looked at my wife and I said, look at these job posts. This is, I've not seen anything like this. This is like a perfect entry level job.
Is it a scam?
She said, well, I didn't know at the
No,
time.
I'm just kidding.
And I said, no,
That's
no,
what
I
you're thinking
mean,
though, right?
it could be. And I sat there and I looked at it and went, and she said, why don't you apply for it? Okay, I'll apply for the job then. Okay, so I did my CV that night with her. My wife, I wouldn't be anywhere without her. She proofreads everything I do. She's absolutely incredible of trying to take anything I write and just changing it just slightly and making it sound 100 times better.
Okay,
She's
so
incredible.
I'll pass you my CV and you can get her to read it and you just pass it off as one of yours.
I'll try. So we did my CV. I applied for it. and we started then looking into the company, and we started doing our research of the company,
Yeah.
which is a big thing. If you, I would say, if you're going to apply for a job, research the company,
Hmm.
research everything you can find about that company. Um, Look at even things like my wife is an accountant. She's a finance director, and she will look at the past, um, like accounts that they have put in to check that they were a legitimate company,
Yeah.
check that they weren't going under,
Right.
and things like that. So she would do all that research, and
Okay.
we did all that night, and into the next day, and she found the owner of the company on LinkedIn,
Mm.
and saw that he'd posted a post saying that he'd just won some a grant for a project that they were working on, and they're really excited, and that they were looking for PHP developers. Please send in your CV. And she said to me, "That I found this. You need to reply to this post."
Yeah.
I said, "What? Well, I can't do that." I said, "No." And she took my phone off me, sent, replied to the post
She's like,
saying,
we're replying to this.
"Yeah." Replied to the post, said, "Amazing news! You've got the money for the grant for this project. I have sent in my CV to you yesterday. Can I check that you received it?" And I think, "Oh my god, there
Nice.
goes my. This is just
Yeah.
blown everything." A couple of hours later, I get a message back from him and saying, "Yes, got your CV. We need to talk."
Wow.
Okay, so I had an interview, my first interview over Zoom, which was the most bizarre thing in the world. It's crazy, it's weird doing a interview over
Yeah.
Zoom, and I just remember sitting at my desk at home doing this interview, and I put my headphones on, and the the headphones that I had at the time were ones that cancel out a lot of the sort of the background noise. And
Right.
I'm talking to this person through Zoom. Obviously, you can hear everything he's saying to me, but I can't hear myself talk, and it was just putting me off. I kept pausing, I kept stuttering, and I'm thinking I can't now take one of my sides of the headphones off my ear so I can hear myself talk. So that just looked weird. So I
Wow. That
struggled
must
through.
be this must be super noise canceling when
Yeah,
it's
they were they were
jeez.
really really good, and I'm just struggling through this interview, not being able to hear my own voice, and so I'm not really sure what tone I'm using. I'm hoping that it's all just coming across really not. Like
Yeah.
I have not got a lot of code to show for
Hmm.
what I know, but
Right.
I was really trying to put the personality and the fact that I'm later on in years.
Hmm.
I've done a variety of different things where I've had to deal with lots of different types of people,
So
and that life experience is something that I've built up over time.
so you feel like the life experience really helped you.
Definitely did. I know for a fact now because I actually got that job, and
Okay, so for
I've been with them for nearly 2 years now.
yeah.
So
So for
I
people thinking that maybe their age
right.
is a barrier to getting a tech job, it's probably more helpful than anything, I would imagine.
The thing is, it depends. It's sort of one that the biggest phrase is it
It
depends.
depends, yeah.
The gentleman, the person that I was being interviewed by owns the company. It's a small company. There's only about 10 of us,
Hmm.
and I'm the only web developer. We develop um, AR and VR content for headsets,
Oh,
mobile devices, and my role is to build the admin panels for the apps that they build and the databases and the APIs.
okay, so you're
So that's
building
what I
that in
do.
you're using Laravel and PHP for that?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I'm pretty much always in Laravel. I've just done a few projects where we've been using, um, putting AR into a website where I've
Mm,
it's just JavaScript, HTML, CSS, or I use I'm a big fan of Tailwind CSS, so I
yeah,
use that in
Tailwind.
quite a few of my
Okay.
projects. Um,
So let me get this straight. You're working on AR projects and you're using a dead language.
Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. PHP is really everywhere and used everywhere. It's not just you know
It's
complete
got
back
to
end or
no, no. Well, the I'm sure Eric's talked to you about Livewire, which is part of
yeah, yeah.
package within Laravel,
Live,
which allows you
mhm.
to write JavaScript but in PHP.
Right.
And if I have to do any JavaScript, I'm reaching for the Livewire first.
Yeah.
I try and do everything in Livewire. I avoid JavaScript like the plague. um,
No doubt.
and
I feel like PHP and Elixir are very similar in that as far as people
mm,
doing them, and that avoiding JavaScript is a one of the things they like to do. Or I mean, I don't like JavaScript either. I'll be completely honest. And no, I'm not disparaging anybody that likes JavaScript either. I think everybody kind of has a language that they like to work in, and a
mhm.
language that kind of fits them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree.
And JavaScript just doesn't fit me at all.
Yeah,
I've tried and failed.
yeah. But going back to the point of the life experience, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
depends. I was lucky. I mean, I got a message after that interview. I got a message a couple of days after saying, can we
Hmm.
talk? I just want to talk about the interview." And
Right.
I'm thinking, okay, but I've not got this job. There's no way I've got this job. But luckily, I had been doing a little private project that I did send to him for a bit of an example of my code.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I wasn't getting asked to do any live coding tests or a take-home coding test. I didn't do any coding tests at all,
Hmm.
which was one of the factors of going for a tech job that really worried me. So in this situation, I didn't do it. I didn't. It wasn't something that he asked me to do. So I got home because I was still working in the school. So it was my lunch break. Luckily, the school's only just over the road from where we live. So I came home. We did the Zoom call again, and he spent about 10 to 15 minutes explaining to me why I wasn't good for the job that he was looking for. That he'd, although he had got about 50 applicants for the role, he selected five for interview process. So I was just chuffed with that. Well,
Hmm.
I'm 5 out of 50. That's pretty good to get an interview. I thought if there's 50 people applying,
Right. Yeah.
and I just think this as it was going on about people that he'd interviewed had a lot more experience, this, that, and the other. I'm thinking, no, I haven't got this job. He
Hmm.
then talked about how he's looking for someone that's going to fit in the team and the personalities he's already got in the team. Because it's a small team,
Yeah.
he's got to be really careful with who he employs with personalities, make sure there's no clashes and we're
Hmm.
all going to get on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when he then said, "That's why I want to give you the job."
Wow.
Because of the personality, the life experiences, and things like that. So,
Uh huh.
as I say, it depends. There are companies out there that have probably
Sure.
got big teams,
Right.
and they want someone with a lot of experience that can hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, when I started the job back in 2020, it was a learning curve, massive. I
No
started in
doubt.
November, and I was given all these code bases that I needed to now maintain that I had that of projects they've got live that are out there, and I'm
Yeah.
looking at it, I'm going, I have absolutely no idea what this is,
Yeah. That's
and
crazy.
there's no one for me to ask because I am the only PHP developer in the
Hmm.
company. So although I really enjoy the working in the company, the people I work with are great. We all get on really well. It was a great fit. Um, the only thing I struggle with is I don't have someone reading my code to tell me, oh, okay, your code works, but you could do it like this, which would be a bit better.
Yeah.
I don't have that code review process. I review my own code,
Right.
basically.
Right.
So,
I guess that's the downside of being the only one.
yeah.
Um, so the not the last guy I interviewed. Maybe it was the guy before that. I'm trying to think if I've released his episode. Yeah, okay. Maybe it was episode 3. Um, so he was solo developer. He's a solo developer for his company, solo
Okay.
full stack guy, and he's kind of in the same boat. Like, um, not a ton of coding experience, but landed a really good position. I
Hmm.
think he said he'd been in it for maybe 3 or 4 months, and he's a solo full stack developer. They're doing. I don't remember exactly what he's working on, but he doesn't have anybody that to review his code or to ask questions. So obviously, he spends a lot of time with online communities, asking
Yeah.
questions or I mean, there's obviously ways to find out what you need, but
Yeah.
there's probably some benefit to. I'd say there is benefit to having someone over you that's much more experienced, just for the sake of being able to ask questions and get help
Yeah.
quick.
Definitely. I mean, I think the PHP Ugly. I'm part of the Discord
Yeah.
channel for PHP Ugly, and I
Hmm.
don't think I've actually answered any questions in there that are related to tech. I've only ever asked questions,
Sure.
so
But I mean,
I feel a bit bad that I'm leaning on everyone in that group
but
because
those
I
guys are
can't.
great.
They
You
are.
know.
I mean, I've had so much good advice. Eric is brilliant. I mean, he's helped
Yeah.
me out a few times, and we've done some Zoom calls to try and help me out with a few bits and pieces.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah.
awesome.
We it's timing issues. It's hard because I'm in the
Hmm.
UK. They're in the US. It's hard to try and find a time when we're both available. But he
Yeah.
jumped on a couple of Zoom calls in the past where he's helped me out with little things like setting up
Hmm.
development environments back when we both used to use a thing called Devilbox.
Mm.
I think he's moved on now, and I've moved on. I use something called Lando, which is like a it's the best way to it's trying to think of the right words now.
Hmm.
Um, it's Docker containers. I suppose it's a framework to
Oh,
be able to
okay.
use Docker easier, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's great because I'm quite often projects. I'm jumping from different PHP versions all the time,
Right.
and Lando makes it really really easy for me to be running different PHP versions on the computer at the same time, so I can jump from project to project quite easily.
Lando. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just looking it up real quick.
Do
Instant
you,
dev environments.
yeah,
Lando.dev. Is that right?
yeah, that's the one. Yep.
Okay.
I think one of the
Um.
Lando developers is actually part of PHP Ugly's Discord
Oh, that's cool.
channel, so that's quite. And I'm
Nice.
sure there's someone there that's part of the development team that work on that. So we can
I'll put
always.
a uh, I'll put a link in the show notes for anybody
Uh,
that might be interested
it's a good way to
in checking it out.
start using Docker without having to learn all the ins and outs of it. Because I found it very confusing to understand how that worked.
Yeah.
And that's helped me a lot with that because it's just a quick um, config file that you put in with your code, and then
Right.
you run lando start. As long as you've got it installed on the system, obviously you put lando
Yeah.
start, and it spins up the containers that you need for that project.
Oh,
It's
okay.
pretty simple and easy, to be honest.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Probably getting started with Docker is usually more difficult if you're just doing it from scratch.
Yeah, I found it
I've
very
never,
difficult to get my
I've,
head around it.
I've never used Docker, so I don't, I don't know a whole lot about it,
Mm.
other than I've heard people talk about it. Using containers and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. And um, when Kubernetes first came out, I'm like, what the hell is a Kubernetes? It's just,
I've never
and
used it either, so I have no idea how that works.
yeah, I have no clue. That's funny though. So you said you've had to kind of lean on the PHP ugly community a little bit for help here and there.
Yeah, yes. So there's quite a few times that I've had to sort of just post a question. I've been googling away for most of the day trying to fix something or get something to work, and I can't get it working. Uh, and then I reach for Discord and sort of big cry for help.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in so many Discord channels. I haven't even counted how many. Uh, there's so many different channels you could be in, and it's so easy to build. build up. I've got friends that have Discords that I talk to them on, and then I've got um, just a bunch of different programming languages and groups. Um, I feel like Discord's kind of it's it's a really good alternative to using Stack Overflow or something like that, especially if you want kind of a the ability to maybe get a little more instant feedback, because sometimes getting questions answered on Stack Overflow or online, forums takes a while.
Yeah, it can. And I still find with Discord, if I post something, it will take a while to come in. But that's because most of the people on Discord are probably in the States, and there's quite
Yeah.
a bit of a time difference for me. So I'm working away whilst most of them are asleep.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so after that, and then I get lots of messages whilst I'm eating my tea. People trying to help me. It's like I'll try all these options tomorrow morning when I get
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Have you tried any other Discord communities, like maybe a another PHP Discord?
I'm in a
Just out of
Laravel.
curiosity.
I'm in a Laravel community
Okay.
on Discord,
Yeah, I think that one's
and
kind of big.
um, that's pretty. And a Vim. I'm a Neo Vim user for my text editor, so I'm in a Vim support
you're
group
you're
on
one of
one.
those.
I'm one of those. Hey, there's quite a few people that back me up,
You must be Eric's favorite.
possibly. I don't.
I know he was a big Vim user. I'm not sure if he's
No,
still. I know he
he still is. He still is. Yeah, as far
okay.
as I'm aware, he is.
I was gonna say I know he uses all the Vim hotkeys and stuff for every dev environment that he ever has to use. Like
Yes. Yeah.
he's in VS Code using Vim hotkeys and shortcuts, and
Yeah.
I have never figured out how to use Vim, and uh, I don't I don't know. I guess I just never really tried it, but um, it it almost feels like a terminal.
It is. Yeah.
So
It's all sort of. It all runs in the
all runs right
terminal.
in the terminal. Yeah. So
Um.
it's very it's different, unless you came up kind of using that sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a bit of a learning curve. I've only been doing it sort of this year. But
okay.
I've the, the the reason why I've tried it out is because I have sort of tendonitis in both of my wrists.
Okay. All
Because
right.
from I'm a drummer,
Yeah.
so I've had self-taught drummers. I had bad technique in the first years of drumming, so
I
I've
mean,
built up some bit of pain in the wrists.
yeah.
So I was trying to avoid having to use a mouse, in Vim you never use a mouse.
Right.
So
Yeah. You don't. It's all like hotkeys, right?
yeah, no, it's all hotkeys, and I found a really good series of videos on YouTube on how to use NeoVim, and
Oh,
I
okay.
started to follow that, and I basically just threw myself in the deep end and just stopped using VS Code and PHP Storm and just
Yeah.
went straight NeoVim and went, well, I'm going straight into NeoVim and just going for it. It's going to force me to have to do all the learning topic,
Hmm.
and I'm nowhere near as good as most of the people that use Vim. I've got a long way to go. I
Sure.
still sort of bash on the J and K keys more than I should do to go left and right, rather than doing like jumping by word or jumping to the end. I'll hold the keys down. So I've got a long way to go
Yeah.
to become a true sort of Vim user. Um,
But
but
you feel
it's
like that kind of helps you
oh
with your tendonitis.
yes, yeah, because my wrists are pretty much staying in the same position the whole time because it's all just moving
Oh,
my fingers around the keyboard.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
have an ergonomic keyboard as well that I use, which is a split keyboard, so I can
Hmm.
get it
Yeah.
sort of more like my shoulder width apart and things like that. So I feel a lot more comfortable when I'm typing.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are really nice.
but it's so ingrained in me now that I'll go to things like Discord and then try and press K to go right for something, and all I'm doing is pressing K in the speech in the message bar at the bottom. It's like no, okay, or go into jump into the terminal to write something, and I'll I'll be
Mhm.
doing a command, and then, oh no, I've got to go back. I've spelt something wrong, and I'll start hitting the J key to go to the left to go back to go to a character to change it, and all I've got is J across my terminal window now because I've just held J down, and so it's so ingrained into me now that
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look at things like that Eric does is actually have the bindings on pretty much anything that he uses
Mm.
because I'm just automatically pressing those buttons to move around when actually that particular application doesn't recognize it.
Right, right. I'm thinking like I would like to try it sometime, so maybe that'll be my next sort of if I decided to jump in a rabbit hole project. Um I
Give it
wonder
a go.
I
Give it a go. I'll send you if I'll find the series of videos and I'll send that over to you in the chat so
Oh
you
yeah,
can
that
have
would
a
be
look at.
great.
I
I'll add
found
that
that
to the show
really
notes
really
also.
yeah, I found that really interesting and easy. It sort of helped me to start doing it step by step of everything that you need to do to get the hang of it.
Are you
So
using straight up Vim or what is it?
I'm using NeoVim.
Neo Vim.
Yeah,
Okay. I've heard. Oh, what's the difference between that and Vim?
that is a very good question.
Is
I've
there an
not.
answer?
I'm sure there is an answer. From my understanding, NeoVim is a branch of Vim,
Okay.
um, but Vim has got its own language that it's written in. I believe, if I'm right, if I might, you might have to get someone else to correct you on this, me on this, because I'm not 100% sure. But
Sure.
NeoVim uses Lua as a language, so you can
Oh,
write
that's
in
cool.
Lua. And I'm it's just I think I've just heard probably Eric talk about it and other people talk about. There's a few other people in the PHP sort of world that I listen to podcasts of, and they talk about using NeoVim. So I just went straight to NeoVim rather than just using Vim. Um,
Right.
I am a Linux user. I've been using Linux for my day-to-day
Yeah.
OS for a while, and I when I first started learning how to use Linux and how to use the command line more, it struck the first sort of thing that I saw was actually using Vim as a default text editor when dealing with things within the command line. So I
Hmm.
started using Vim quite quickly. So, but without realizing that I was using Vim, if that makes sense, I was just following
Yeah. Yeah.
instructions on a blog post, and I didn't realize I was actually using Vim um, until it sort of all started to fall together, and I started to understand what was going on more.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I'd say it's kind of ingrained in me now. Just the up, down, left, right keys, hotkeys that
Right.
we use. They're ingrained in me to the point where I'm using them in programs that they don't do anything apart from print the letters on the screen. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, flipping it, delete all that, and then use the arrow keys to move around now. So yeah, I'll probably be looking at using it in other areas now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I'm definitely gonna have a look at it because I don't know. It looks pretty interesting, and it's something I haven't tried or given a chance. So
Yeah.
I think that might be the next thing to kind of test out. I want to see if it works with Elixir also. I would
Okay.
assume it does, but I don't know if it does because I haven't done any digging on it.
Yeah.
So
Don't know much about
that
Elixir myself, so I don't know.
yeah, that's going to be something I'm going to check out.
Yeah.
Um, check out next. But well, hey man, I think we're just about at the end of our time. I don't want to keep you any longer than I already have.
Okay.
But yeah, would you be interested in coming on again some other time and maybe just uh, talking about some other topics? Or
Yeah. Sure. No problem.
all right, awesome, man. Well, I will. I'll let you go, and I'll catch up with you later.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to episode 7 of the Citizen Coder Podcast. If you'd like to follow Michael, you can find him on Twitter or in the PHP Ugly Discord. Links to those or any other software or websites mentioned are also in the show notes. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and as always, I'll see you next time.